And I'm not an economist. In fact, I'll tell you my first 2 lessons in economics and where they happened. Not at the University of Connecticut. 32 Douglas Drives, where I grew up, was a kitchen table. It was maple, it was a nice thing. And I bet you learned your first 2 lessons in economics there too. Here they were, they sound familiar? Spend no more than you make. Spend no more than you make. Lesson 1. Lesson 2. Borrow no more than you could afford to pay back. Borrow no more than you could afford to pay back. The distinguished professors who taught me that were my mother and father. And every one of you, I'm sure, learned the same lesson. And I'm sure every one of you, in order to be successful businesses, employ those 2 basic strategies every single day. We don't in government. We spend more than we take in. We borrow more than we can afford to pay back. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why in one 6-month period, when we thought we put our fiscal woes to bed, we have more. And why is that concerning? People say, well, it's only a fraction of the amount it was like. And it is. It is. I'm not saying that we didn't take any steps to correct the problem. But that fraction keeps growing, folks. And you've all been there before. Where are we coming when it gets real big? Are we going to come back here a year from now and say, fortunately, we're going to have to sacrifice yet again, and businesses, you're going to have to pay more of your fair share? Which, by the way, in my opinion, is a contradiction in terms. More of your fair share. If your fair share was fair, why the hell are we increasing it? That's a real problem, because I know that in the course of these past several years, you've had some tough decisions. You've had to sit across a conference table or a desk and call in Betty and Joe or John and Sam and say, I'm sorry, I can't afford to keep you anymore. And it wasn't just because of taxes. It was because of the 2 hits you got on the unemployment compensation tax that we as a state did nothing to help you with. And some of the other things. Some of the other mandates that came down, like paid sick days, first state in the United States of America to do that. We have bills that are out there now trying to increase the minimum wage. Now, I'm a great supporter of the minimum wage, but this is not the time. We're still not out of that hole. I have voted for an increase in the minimum wage on several occasions when this economy was doing well. I don't think it's doing so well right now. And you guys need a break, because you got to continue to create those jobs, all those jobs that we lost. All those businesses, 15,000 went down, and 15,000 businesses closed their doors in less than 2 years. 100,000 people lost their jobs. Yeah, we're getting back, thank the good Lord, but it ain't easy. And we're not making it any easier for you. And let me tell you, as the speaker indicated, when we do work together, great things could happen. Because we did have a historic job session in October, where we did put our partisan differences aside for one brief shining moment. And we got together and said, we got to create jobs. That's not a Republican or Democratic thing. Let's cut the you-know-what and work together, roll up our sleeves. And we did. Republicans, Democrats, legislators from the House, from the Senate, and the executive branch, with the governor, to his credit. And we got together and we did some good things. And I remember my floor speech when we brought that out. And I said, will this be one brief shining moment, or will it be the first day of a new chapter of the way to do business? Well, the answer to that question would not come until this session started. And unfortunately, I think we're going backwards. The speaker referenced, Marshall referenced, the education reform package. And I'm one of the biggest critics of Governor Malloy. But when the man does well, you got to give him credit where he deserves it. He took a very controversial issue, an issue of education reform, an issue that heretofore has only been solved by throwing more money at it, and he put it squarely on our table. We had an opportunity to attack this problem, this important problem, in a bipartisan way, similar to what we did in October, but we chose not to. Unfortunately, partisan politics reared its ugly head. Deals were cut behind closed doors. And what's really, really disappointing is that some of the key measures of reform that even teachers were brought, had conceded have to be done. That common stuff like, you have a right to evaluate whether or not I'm doing a good job. And if I'm not doing a good job, there has to be a consequence for that. Because the person who suffers are the kids. And teachers agreed to that. Now, as the speaker said, and he's right, and as much credit as I think the governor deserves for putting the issue squarely on the table, he also deserves some criticism, because with his tone and rhetoric, it came across and was at least perceived as attacking teachers. And I got to tell you something. I don't know about you folks, but I like the teachers in my town. I was taught by them, see, as were my 3 kids. And we had a pleasant experience. And they were good teachers. Were there some bad ones? Sure there were. And I'm sure you like your teachers. And there's a lot of towns here that like their public schools. Are there bad ones? Yes. Do they need to be rescued or reconstituted? Absolutely. If a teacher is a bad teacher, not a bad person, a bad teacher, do they need to either be, one, given help, and when that doesn't work, let go? Yes. That's what we should strive for. And unfortunately, the education bill that came out of the committee did none of that. Did none of that. And if we do approach this problem like we did the job session, we could truly have reform that's the corny old saying, win-win-win for everybody. So those are our challenges, ladies and gentlemen. To come together on the budget, to keep in mind those 2 first lessons in economics we learned at our kitchen table, to work together to make a better Connecticut. Thank you for what you do. Keep us accountable for what we do. God bless.